Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Miguel. Let me ask you a question. Has Seiko quietly released one of its best looking modern dive watches? After spending some time with this new Seiko Prospex HBB001 limited edition, I honestly think this might be one of the nicest looking divers they've released in quite some time. Now before we jump into the review, I want to thank my friends over at GQ Jewelers for letting me borrow this watch. If you're looking for a nice watch like a Seiko or a Casio, a Squale, a Ball watch, or a number of other incredible brands, definitely go give them a follow on Instagram. They always have some really cool pieces coming through the shop, and I truly appreciate them letting me feature watches like this on the channel. Now let's get into it. Seiko really doesn't need much of an introduction. They've been making dependable dive watches for decades, and the Prospex line has become one of the strongest collections in the industry. Whether you're a collector just getting into watches, chances are you've owned or at least considered a Prospex at some point. Every once in a while though, Seiko releases a model that feels a little different from the rest of the lineup. That's exactly what we have here. The HBB001 is a limited edition of 9,999 pieces worldwide. Now I know that number doesn't exactly scream limited edition, but it still gives collectors something a little more unique than a standard production model. Alongside it, Seiko also released the HBC005 if this one is not your style. I absolutely love the way Seiko executed the blue on the bezel. It contrasts beautifully against the silver dial, giving the watch a sporty look without feeling loud or over-designed. It's one of those watches that keeps catching your eye every time light hits it. The case does measure in at 41.7 millimeters in diameter. It's 49.5 lug to lug and 12.3 millimeters thick with a 20 millimeter lug width. On my 6 and 7/8 inch wrist, this watch wears really well, but it is a little chunky. Keep in mind with the unsized bracelet, the watch does weigh in at 172 grams, so you definitely feel the weight. Now normally I'm not the biggest fan of watches that are over 41 millimeters, but thanks to the angular design, it hugs the wrist nicely and never feels oversized. The case finishing is another area where Seiko continues to impress. There's this beautiful combo of brushing and polishing throughout, and little details like the knurling on the sign screw down crown really elevate the overall design. Speaking of the crown, it's smooth to operate, and together with the screw down case back helps provide 200 meters of water resistance, making this a true everyday dive watch. Now moving up to the bezel, I have mixed feelings. The 120 click unidirectional bezel sounds fantastic. Every click has a satisfying crisp sound with virtually no backplay. However, it's also surprisingly stiff to rotate. I'm not sure if that's something that'll loosen up over time with regular use, but I figured it was worth mentioning because it was one of those first things I noticed while handling the watch. Now let's talk about the dial. If there's one thing Seiko consistently gets right, it's their dials. Whether you're spending a few $100s or several thousand, Seiko knows how to create depth, texture, and visual interest. This dial is no exception. It's clean, easy to read, and paired with those bezel colors, it makes for me one of the better looking Prospex divers I've seen in recent years. Then, of course, we have the lume. Honestly, this is where Seiko continues to dominate. The lume bright on the hands, hour markers, and the pip on the bezel is incredibly bright. Low light legibility is outstanding, and it's exactly what I expect from a Prospex diver. Unfortunately, my biggest complaint is sitting right on top of that beautiful dial, the Harlex crystal. Look, this isn't new. Seiko has been using Harlex for years, and while it's certainly durable, I can't help but wish they would finally move to sapphire crystals at this price point, especially when so many microbrands selling watches for under $600 have been offering sapphire, screw-link bracelets, and premium class for years. Another design choice I still can't get behind is the 4 o'clock date window. I know it's become part of Seiko's identity, but personally, I would prefer no date at all, or simply moving it back to the traditional 3 o'clock. Inside the watch does beat Seiko's reliable 4R35 automatic movement. This caliber features 23 joules, hacks, and hand winds, beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and offers approximately 41 hours of power reserve. No, it isn't the most exciting movement on the market, but it's proven itself to be incredibly dependable over the years and simply gets the job done. Now let's talk about my biggest frustration, the bracelet. Visually, I actually like it. The finishing matches the case nicely and feels solid overall, but sizing it, that's another story. Seiko continues using pin and collar construction instead of screws, and while it works, it's definitely more tedious than it needs to be. Then we get to the clasp. Unfortunately, it's stamped instead of fully milled, and honestly, this is where I get a little frustrated with Seiko. We all know they're capable of building better bracelets. They've proven that on more expensive models. Instead, they intentionally leave certain features off watches like this to create separation within the lineup. From a business perspective, I understand why. As a collector, it's frustrating. But here's the thing, even after all those criticisms, I still really like this watch. Sometimes a watch just has personality. The bezel colors are fantastic. The case finishing is beautiful. The lume is phenomenal. The proportions wear incredibly well on my wrist, and the samurai is a legend. I also forgot to mention that this watch was released by Seiko in celebration of Seiko's 145th anniversary. The blue accents, according to Seiko, are inspired by Seiko blue. Look, if you're looking for a Seiko Samurai that's a little different from the standard black dial offerings, I genuinely think as a collector, this HBB001 is worth considering. Sure, it's limited to 9,999 pieces, so it's not exactly rare, but it still feels unique enough to stand out in Seiko's lineup. At the end of the day, this review really sums up my relationship with Seiko. They frustrate me because I know they're capable of giving us sapphire crystals, screw link bracelets, and male class, but then they release a watch like this, a watch with a beautiful dial, outstanding lume, excellent proportions, and enough personality that I find myself overlooking some of those shortcomings. And that's why I keep coming back to Seiko. I hope you guys enjoyed that review, and if you did, please comment, like, subscribe, and hype this video. It really helps. As always, be safe out there and stay humble.